How's everything going?
Another blessed day on the earth, Peter. You already
Right
know.
on. Beautiful day. Beautiful day.
Yes, every day.
So, what the topic you mentioned that you want to talk about escaping the music industry's clone wars. What exactly do you mean about clone wars? I'm interested in this.
All right, so I was in the car today, and my wife had a Spotify playlist. I guess it was Megan Thee Stallion's Spotify playlist, and I knew the first song, Savage, right? And she's kind of talking some really raunchy things, and so that's coming from the Nicki Minaj energy. But then there was about 5 or 6 other girls that came right after that I had never heard of, and they all sounded exactly the same. And the music industry is just that. It's a copycat industry. And I think that's for the detriment of the art of music, right? And so, kind of like correlating it to food, right? Food. Why do we eat food as humans? It's to nourish our bodies, right? Why do we listen to music? It's for enjoyment. America really loves the cheapest food that's the worst for you, right? And there's companies that will literally supply billions of dollars to make sure that you keep buying this shitty food that is not good for you, and it continues to kill you. But because LeBron James or they're giving you some type of little trick with their meal, it's a happy meal now, even though it's making you sad because it's not nourishing you. So you can't really do the things that you want to do. I feel the same thing about the music industry, right? And so, being that it's a copycat industry, it's not about the music, it's about the widgets, it's about selling something. It doesn't really matter what it is that we're selling. As long as it kind of sounds like something else that already exists, let's sign that artist if they kind of look like that somebody already exists. So you have to already sound like somebody and look like somebody that already exists. Your numbers on social media have to be already big. How do you do that? Right? And that's on you as the artist to create that. And then pretty much straight out the gate, you already have sold yourself out. So you're not really an artist anymore. You're really a mimicker, right? You're mimicking things that already exist. And that is the music industry. Music business is about dollars, right? It's about dollars and cents. Now, at the same time, there's a game that's being played in the music industry that exists now in 2020. This game did not exist in the 1960s, the 1970s. You had places like Motown, you had places like Stax. Musicians actually mattered. You actually had to play your instruments. You actually had practice and played gigs where people relied on you to actually play what's on the chart. Somebody actually wrote it for you so that when it hit the record, it didn't really matter what you looked like. It mattered what you sounded like, because you were going to get played on a radio and nobody's actually going to see you. So it mattered what you sounded like and how cool your record sounded, so that the people would call into the radio stations, keep tuning into the radio stations to hear your record again, or they're going to go out there and buy it. And that was the point of the music industry, was to have people to go buy your records. Now it's not about that. By the time they got to the 80s, everybody started looking the same, sounding the same. There was 1,000 Poisons, 1,000 Motley Crues, 1,000 Bon Jovis. And it wasn't until Nirvana came that kind of changed. And as soon as Nirvana came, you had 1,000 bands that looked like Nirvana. And ever since then, it became more about what you look like. Everybody has the same audio programs. We all have Logic. We all have Reason. We all have Pro Tools. You have the same sounds. We all have the same snare drums. If you listen to the hip hop beats that are playing now, it sounds like a 4-year-old made it. And you can make that beat in about 30 minutes. So if we're going to rap about sex and we're going to rap over beats that were made in 30 minutes, there's no quality control over the music, right? Now, the game that I'm talking about in the music industry is the game of streams, the game of plays. If you listen to a band like Wolfpack, who I never heard of until Billboard wrote about them, they sold out Madison Square Garden without a manager and without a label. How did they do that? They put out an album of silence on Spotify, and it was called Sleepify, and each song was 30 seconds. So on Spotify, if your song is 20 seconds, somebody plays your song for 20 seconds, you don't get paid. So they put out 10 songs that were all 30 seconds, and they had all their fans play their silent album. We could be listening to their album right now. What makes your silent album better than my silent album? Is your silence better than my silence? There's nothing happening, right? So it's a game. They use that money from the silent album to put into their own thing. They did it without a manager, without a label. Chris Brown, coming from the major label system, also the major label understands the same thing. And when he came out with his album in 2017, 2018, it had 45 tracks on it. Why would you put out an album of 45 tracks? The reason why you do that is because you want to have as many plays as you possibly can so that your album goes to the top #1 streams. So again, it has nothing to do with the quality of Chris Brown's music, right? It's about the quantity of his music, because that's how the charts are going to go. And then when the charts go up, then the label goes, we got the #1 artist with the #1 album. And guess what? I don't give a shit because the music doesn't mean anything to me because I know it's hamburgers and I don't eat McDonald's because I know it's not good for me, right? But I care about music and I care about life. So the Clone Wars is the industry. How do you avoid the Clone Wars? You do what Joe Rogan did, right? You invest in yourself and you create your own thing. Then when you create your own thing, all the piranhas come, right? And if you understand what piranhas want, you can feed them a little niblet here, you can feed them a little niblet there, but you control your art versus copying everything that came before. Because if you copy everything that came before, when those things change, you're done and you have no career, right? You only have this thing. Oh yeah, I remember that girl. She was talking about curved dicks and love sucking this and sucking that. It's like, nobody's going to care about that in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So that's the Clone War of the music industry. And it's more apparent now than ever before because you will not get signed unless you look, sound, smell, have numbers like everybody else.
Right on. Thank you, Duke. Yeah, there's a lot there, man. And I love it. Going back to is a couple things I was noting. It's like the Silent album. Talking about that art, and I always look back to like John Cage's 433, which is just a piece of silent music.
Exactly.
And it was always open for interpretation of what it is. But they weren't going for that. They weren't going for the interpretation. They were telling their fans to go to sleep with it and just put it on repeat. And then eventually Spotify took that down. But
they're just using that money. They used that money to make the album that they did sell, and they sold out Madison Square Garden. I mean, that's amazing. I never even heard of them.
Well, so it goes back to Twisted Sister, and when I talk to any artist, I say, required movie watching, documentary watching is We Are Twisted Fucking Sister, because you want to talk about a band that it's like, I want to rock. When they got signed to Atlantic in '83, I think it was, I Want to Rock. That was the big breakthrough, MTV smash hit. The documentary ends there. It ends with them getting signed to Atlantic. It's all about what they did in the 70s and all the problems and trials and tribulations and everything they had to overcome. And what they did, because no radio station would play their music, they didn't have anybody, like they sold out the Palladium, like first band to fully sell out the Palladium without a manager, without a record label, without a publishing contract. And one of the things that they did, and I love this kind of ingenious mentality, was they listened to the radio, and radio advertising on the radio was the key thing, that you could play a song on the radio for a minute as an advertisement, and you could just play the music. So if people were listening, so they created ads that were 1 minute long, and it was just their music playing. And then at the end of it said, "Come see Twisted Sister live at the Palladium." And so everybody got to hear their music. And that's the kind of real ingenious, innovative kind of creative ways of getting around the system there. And, the other thing is, going back to, things that sound the same. And we always see it's like every 8 years, it's a change in the music sound. We had you talk about the 80s, and we had like metal, and it was, like A Million Poisons and Wingers and all of that. And it's really interesting to notice, some of those musicians, the people in those metal bands were absolutely amazing musicians that were studio musicians, doing stuff for a whole bunch of other, for television, for advertising, studio stuff. And they were musicians, and they were fantastic musicians, and they just went and rocked out. And then you had Nirvana and grunge and alternative, and then it changed into boy bands and pop going into the 2000s. So I hear what you're saying, and I also think it's kind of like that cyclical. It's like you find that sound, and then people latch onto that sound, and then you can create your own. What's the next sound? And always be trying to figure out what the next sound is, and being on the front of catching that wave and creating your own curves there.
Can I give you one sidebar on Twisted Sister? The joys of Twisted Sister. South by Southwest, I think it was 2013. I'm wearing a Saigon Kick shirt, right? Saigon Kick.
Saigon Kick.
All right, Saigon Kick, one of the greatest bands ever, right? They only put out 3 albums with Atlantic, and then some albums after that. I'm wearing the Saigon Kick shirt, and I'm going to this Thai place, right? And this guy outside, he goes, "Man, Saigon Kick, I haven't seen somebody wear a Saigon Kick shirt in so long." And in my heart, I'm like, anybody that knows about Saigon Kick is automatically my friend. And I said, "Man, you know about Saigon Kick? That's amazing." He said, "Yeah, I signed them." I said, "Oh, you're Jason Flom." He said, yeah,
Ah,
I'm Jason Flom. And I had no idea who Jason Flom was, other than every time I read the Saigon Kick bio, it said Jason Flom. Now, Jason Flom signed Twisted Sister, but he also signed Katy Perry and Britney Spears and Matchbox 20 and Hootie and the Blowfish and Collective
mhm,
Soul and Stone Temple Pilots and blah, blah, blah. But I couldn't give a shit about any of those people. Not that I knew about it, but I just loved that he signed Saigon Kick. And he said, I wonder why that band didn't get bigger than they were.
mhm.
You know, the answer really lies in the system, because the system didn't believe that those guys could be whatever they could be, because they didn't have that look or that sound, right? And that is the system. And
Yeah, man. All
ultimately,
right. Thank you,
you know,
Duke. That was awesome. Yeah. And Saigon Kick, one of my favorite songs, A Month of Sundays. And that sure is what it's felt like for the last few months here. So thanks for that. And also, yeah, check out that documentary, We Are Twisted Fucking Sister, because Jason Flom gets into it. He was told if he ever brings up the band's name again, that he's not allowed in the Atlantic building. So, talk about a determined person. So thanks for that.